One, two, three.
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from our secret ice fortress and laboratory high in the Swiss Alps. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. Keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground as Sumo and Smokestack direct your attention to a higher dimension. Are you ready? Stand by.
"9/11 Ferguson, Harry Potter, Amazon, Ziggy Stardust, Michael Jordan, the Da Vinci Code, Oprah selfie, Star Wars, Newton, Avatar, Game of Thrones, Super Bowl, banning GMOs, climate change, Walking Dead, MTV, Tony Blair, wage gap, Spotify, Wall Street has been occupied, Columbine, New Orleans, Mandela, Ali, email server, Iraq sequel, Beaver Fever, Wi-Fi. We didn't start the fire, was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire, we didn't light it, trying to fight it. BP, social media, Apple, Wikipedia, Bill Gates, headache quakes, Proposition 8, Trayvon Martin, Comic-Con, Boston bombing, Pokemon, YouTube, Google, Spock the king of pop, Snowden, Putin, vinyl's coming back again, Lady Gaga, Taliban, Obama, Anthrax, hipsters, lobbyists, Oscars, hacktivists, Princess Kate, Hunger Games, mapping out genetics. We didn't start the fire, was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire, we didn't light it, trying to fight it. Legal pot, hashtags, Caitlyn Jenner, Instagram, Netflix, marriage rights, pro-choice, pro-life, stem cells, election fraud, got a rover on Mars, flip water, Gangnam style, common sense been gone a while, Matthew Shepard, Twitter, Kurt Cobain, Pixar, Hyperloop, sheep clones, gotta have a smartphone, Syrian refugees fighting human trafficking, ISIS, Nintendo, Zika down in Rio. We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire, we didn't light it, we're trying to fight it. NSA, Taylor Swift, Robin Williams, Benedict, H1N1, Crimean invasion, Roswell and the aliens, scripted WrestleMania, Tesla, Seinfeld, no one beats Michael Phelps, Tea Party politics, Weird Al Yankovic, OJ, Big Bang, every day we feed the flame. We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire, we didn't light it, but we're trying to fight it. Gun control, 3D print, Guns N' Roses back again, James Bond in Iran, MySpace, Kim Jong, Hybrid Hugo, Twilight, Emma Watson, Black Lives, Hating the Kardashians, overpopulation. Jimmy Fallon, Y2K, Bin Laden, Kanye. Water drought, voter doubt, housing crash, bailouts. Hamilton, Guantanamo, Reddit, Marvel, Cosby drones. One more never-ending war, I can't take it anymore. We didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire, but when we have gone, it will still burn on and on and on. There once was a man who said, God, I find it exceedingly odd to think that a tree continues to be when there's no one about on the quad. God said in reply, Dear sir, your astonishment's odd. I am always about on the quad. And that's why the tree continues to be since observed by yours faithfully, God. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why is Bigfoot in the woods?
Why is he in the woods?
Why is Nessie in a pond? Not in a pond, rather.
What?
But instead in a lake. Why do ghosts inhabit abandoned hotels, you may ask? Why, for that matter, when performing a seance, do you need to turn the lights off? Why are children afraid of the dark? And why do they believe monsters come from the closet or under the bed? Why exactly do the Illuminati use one-eye symbolism?
Now, I do wonder that. Yeah.
Why do UFO encounters happen to people in the middle of nowhere, but seldom in the middle of a big city? Why do we live in cities, for that matter? What's the point of them? Why are people in more quote-unquote primitive cultures more prone to believing in spirits and the supernatural than urbanites? Why was King Arthur cuckolded by Sir Lancelot?
Whoa.
Why are we afraid of disinformation? Why are saints depicted with halos? Why do the jinn of Arabic lore appear as creatures of smoke? Today, my friends, we will learn the answer to all these questions.
What?
And surprisingly, they're the same answer. They're the same answer. It's the same answer for all of them. For every single one.
Wow.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. That was a good, show
surprisingly, we build cities for the exact same reason that the jinn appear as smoke and Sir Lancelot cucked King Arthur with Guinevere. Same exact reason.
I'm ready.
You may not believe it, but it's true.
I'm ready to have my noodle baked.
You are ready to have your noodle baked, aren't you? I can tell from this morning. How are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing real well. Yeah. Living the dream, as usual.
Yeah. How's your Crimea going?
My Crimea? I don't know. It's full of Russians right now.
Yeah. That's the way most Crimeas are going these days, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, Crimeas are just all over the map.
Yep.
Well, I mean, they're not really all over the map. They're that one place.
They're one place, yeah.
But their map is changing a lot. Okay, I had to shut off some machinery there.
Yeah.
Does it sound better?
Oh, yeah, sound great.
Okay, good. All right, good. Yeah, so all those things are the same. A lot of people don't realize that. They are. It is also why I sang the song today. It's all the same thing. Did you know about King Arthur's plight?
I think I did, but I never thought about it in quite those terms.
You never thought about it as like, this is why the jinn are here.
No, yeah, I didn't really connect it.
Yeah, or why we build the cities.
I mean, I guess I still don't connect it, but maybe by the end of show.
By end of show, all will be connected. But first, all will be connected. You know, there was that line, famous poet. I think it was a Sufi poet, but not the one everybody knows. Mm-hmm. The other one that nobody knows, including me. He said, the secret to poetry is that the world is full of things and they can all be compared to each other. And that's true.
That works, yeah.
The world is full of things and they can all be compared to each other. And sometimes people think, oh, we're making comparisons that aren't real. But that's not so. Because if you see the connection is there. Some people are like, oh, you're just seeing faces in a piece of toast. You have pareidolia. Mm-hmm. In my defense of pareidolia is no, the face is actually in the toast.
You made it appear.
You're just you're right. Like it's there. But first we need to talk about some other stuff, like how David Hogg glows in the dark, very brightly.
Literally or figuratively?
But probably both.
Okay.
Did you see his recent takes?
No. What did he have to say?
Oh, he had some interesting things to say. We're also going to talk about the eternal grievance setup, and what's probably going on in Ukraine, as well as I want to talk about is the Brooklyn subway shooting reel.
Oh, good question.
I was really ready to believe it until they found the guy's credit card comically, just like they found the passports at 9/11.
Wait, they found his credit card at the scene?
His credit card was just lying there. Yeah, they're just like, look at his credit card. It's this guy.
These terrorist guys sure do lose their stuff. I tell you.
Their cards just fall out. Their personal identification just falls out of their pockets into the open.
Amazing how that happens.
And also, he had like a YouTube channel that wasn't popular. Where he just talked about, he was basically like a hotep on steroids.
Well, I mean, lots of people have YouTube channels that aren't popular.
Yeah, but it was like comically racist.
Right.
For a black guy.
Yeah.
I would believe all of it except for the credit card thing, which makes me suspicious. And the fact that he didn't kill anybody, but he shot a lot.
Nobody died?
No, nobody died. It's a hallmark of black shooters, unfortunately.
Like their aim is bad?
If you look at, I mean, black people really have to work on their aim. Like, the thing about it, look, this is not a contest one wants to win.
No.
But white people are way better at mass shootings. In terms of deaths.
Yeah, I mean,
way
now
better.
that you mention it.
Every time black people do it, it's like, you know what it is they learn to shoot from all the gangster rap videos. And they hold the gun up sideways, like from far away, and you're not going to hit
anything. Yeah, you can't
like
really aim that way is the problem.
No. He was probably walking through the subway humming like Little Smallsy Mac or whatever.
I think you're assuming a lot here.
No. And he's got his arm up sort of sideways and he's just blasting. And he's talking about how he was the Prince of Egypt, right?
He was into the Hotep stuff a lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if he was real.
Yeah. And
then he's just boom, 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 boom. And then he shoots like 20-something people and nobody dies. Or no, and then I don't know. But like compare that to like white people shooting. I don't know if white people practice better, if they have better trigger discipline. I don't know if they just use better weapons. But white people are way better at mass shootings, just in general. Like almost all the mass shootings you see where like a lot of people die is a white guy, and then black people they shoot a lot and they hit people but they don't die. So I don't know what that says about race relations in our culture. It's a discrepancy that has not been brought up in the media. You know, this is a disparity, a racial disparity.
It's a disproportionate impact
in kill death ratio. You know, they bring up black crime a lot, but what they don't bring up is like bullets fired to people killed.
Right.
And the white people have a way better ratio on that one. And I think it's we need to get more firearms training in the black community. we have to up their numbers because they're being very inefficient.
Oh man.
Terrorism would go down if they could place their shots better. Because then they could hit the people they were mad at and it'd be over. But see, he was probably mad at one guy on the train.
Okay.
And he was just firing and he just missed him every time and hit a bunch of other people.
Right.
And if we just trained, if we had an African-American terrorist camp, he could have gone on there and shot
I think they've had those before.
And it'd be over.
Yeah, I think that's been done.
Well, I know, but it's worth anotherher's try.
Wasn't there one in New Mexico for a while? Something like that?
There was one in New Mexico, and it didn't pan out for reasons that I don't understand.
Right.
But if you just learn to shoot better, you can hit your targets and then move on with life.
Right.
Whereas this guy, he's probably going to be sitting in jail now, if he's real, again, stewing over the fact that he didn't kill not one white person, when that was his whole stated goal from his YouTube channel.
He was pretty blunt about his stated goals. Yeah.
Which makes me suspect that this is some sort of weird, like, trying to get white people riled up for some reason thing. Because, like, he had a YouTube channel for years where he's like, I want to kill white people. And I'm gonna kill, and then no one ever picked up on it.
Right.
And I don't know. Every time one of these things happens, we find out later that the person in question either is of questionable existence or was well known to the intelligence community.
Well, he did spend time in the mental health system, which to me is like where they go to spin people up and turn them loose. But
yeah, I think the CIA just goes to mental health facilities and finds recruits.
Yeah.
And they tell them, like, hey, you should be more mad about this, and we'll keep tabs on you, and then when something happens, we'll spin the story, or whatever.
Right. Well,
go ahead.
My antenna went up when I saw somebody remark the day before that, Biden just made this big speech about needing to ban assault weapons and how they're so dangerous, and then the next day there's a mass shooting on the New York City subway, and that in New York City it's the drama stage of America.
Yes,
where all performative
correct.
Things happen. It's like
yes.
New York represents all of us and everywhere in America. And so I can't help but see this as a performative, symbolic act.
Yeah. Now he did. I think use a pistol instead of an assault weapon.
Yeah, it was a Glock with a stendo.
Yeah, an extendo. Which he could have. Yeah. It didn't extendo his accuracy.
No, it didn't.
He was all over the place.
Oh man!
And how many? You would know this more than me. How many bullets does a Glock hold?
Like a typical full size would be 17. A compact would be 15, and then
so he had to reload at least once.
Well, if he was using a stendo, he probably had up to 25 or 30, depending on the size of it.
Okay, so he fired one full thing.
Yeah, and according to
literally shooting fish in a barrel, shooting people on a subway train is not.
Well, if you watch
and he killed nobody.
I saw some of the, it was suspicious.
I'm embarrassed for this fellow.
Well, it was suspicious that a lot of the webcams in the area were not working at the time. And
someone gave me a stat about that. On the New York subway system, both on the trains and in the stations, there's like a combined 80,000 cameras or something.
Yeah, there's lots of cameras.
And of those 80,000, the only 3 which didn't work that day were the 3 that were covering this guy conveniently.
Yeah.
That's super sus.
I think Jeffrey Epstein's prison guards got jobs at the New York City subway security team.
That's incredibly suspect. Combine that with his credit card falling down. See, what I think they're in the middle of doing is I think that they poke at people for a long time to get them riled up and angry.
Yep.
And then they try to flip the script to give them an excuse to be angry and violent, trying to tempt them into it. And I think they've poked at white people with for a long time, for many years, and now they may be, I'm not 100%, trying to flip the script to being like, and now you get to be mean at the evil black people that are terrorists, right? And get upset to cause more racial strife and violence, when really this guy may not even be a real thing. Because it's like, if you don't kill anybody, then you have it's a lot easier to hide that. Like, you just, some people were injured, and but no one's dead.
Right.
If you're claiming like 50 people died,
there's a lot of paperwork when people die.
No, paperwork, right.
Well, I did find it interesting that the dude's YouTube was all about kill whitey and kill white people and all this stuff. But as soon as this thing went down, it was immediately, the talking points in the New York City media were immediately about anti-Asian hate crimes,
Right.
which seemed a little weird, considering
Yeah, the whole
that the
thing
guy
is
was
suspicious and strange.
Yeah.
When it first came out, I was like, oh, okay, some guy got on a train and started to shoot, and I was like, okay. But then it's like they found the credit card and all the cameras didn't work, and it's like, no one dies.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It just seems a bit sus. So maybe that's not even there. And when I combine it with David Hogg, because that was on 4/12, right? That happened? That happened on
I'm not sure.
April 12th. Anyway, either the day of or the day before, David Hogg tweeted these tweets. Quote, he says, David Hogg, the alleged survivor of the alleged Parkland shooting by an alleged Nicholas Cruz.
Okay.
Right. Has anyone else had the experience of having a parent who did a lot of classified stuff, and while they can't tell you about it, you start connecting the dots and realize that if you're even 10% right, your parent did some insane stuff?
What?
Right.
What?
Right.
Man.
Yeah, I think, David Hogg's dad is like a spook. And it always is the case that this, and again, I don't know if Parkland shooting really happened or not, but I'm decently sure that if it did happen, Nicholas Cruz was put up to it in some way by spooks, and that they had foreknowledge of it. But I'm also, I mean, you could convince me that it was all a ruse and that no one died there. They made some loud bang bang noises, said some stuff happened that didn't. They took some kids out of school, put them in witness protection program, and said they're dead. And then put David Hogg as the face of a anti-gun movement to try and disarm Americans. That could have easily happened also. You know? Like he said, he went on in this thread that David Hogg wrote, he said, quote, like got awards, they don't even say what they are for. Parentheses, very clearly like redacted. In parentheses, or literally got a reward and can't even take it home because it's that secret. I didn't realize how like not normal this was until I was older. And now I'm thinking about all the random things throughout my childhood, and though I don't know what it was exactly he was doing, I'm like, and then he posted a picture of Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with his crazy wall. I'm like, huh. But makes sense, since he knows how to shoot guns, fly a plane, fly a helicopter, scuba dive, skydive, and more. And both my grandpas did a lot of secret stuff too, according to family lore. Some stuff so crazy I don't believe it. It was the same path I wanted to go down prior to everything happening.
What?
Following in their footsteps. Learn a couple languages, computer science, international affairs, and then drop off the face of the earth and go work at the State Department. Obviously not doing that now.
Obviously not.
Obviously not doing that now.
Oh man. Either he's dumber than I thought he was, or
no, he's
just teasing.
Yeah, it's revelation of the method. They have to tell you. It's just the way it works. Because if they tell you, then it makes it. If they tell you and you still don't believe it, then it solidifies the deception, right? Because they make it obvious. Like, obviously not doing that now. I always wanted to be a spook, lying for the U.S. government. I'm obviously not doing that now.
I picked the wrong week to take a vacation from Twitter. I tell you what. That's a stunner.
Were you? Didn't you say it because your wife was upset because you were like mad or something?
She thinks I'm stressed out because I'm apparently yelling in my sleep and waking her up.
That means it's working. That means Twitter is working.
So she's like, "Will you please take a break from Twitter?" It's been nice, I will say.
No, if you're yelling in your sleep and constantly paranoid that you're being watched, that means it's working. That means you're becoming enlightened. Right?
I don't know that I want to be enlightened.
That means it's all working.
Well, I haven't yelled in my sleep this week apparently, so I guess maybe Twitter was causing my restless nights.
Oh, listen to this one. The thread goes on. He says, it's funny how many conspiracy theories there are, because while it's true my dad was a Fed and did a lot of stuff I can't talk about, we really are just kids. And the fact you think we are so good we must be FBI or CIA or something is flattering. It's false. Trust me. If we were, we would be a lot more successful. I wouldn't be talking about this, and I certainly wouldn't have so many spelling errors. LOL. This is a kicker. But it has made it easier to figure out which of my classmates I will probably never see or hear from again after college because they are going to work for, quote, the government, unquote, haha. So.
He talks about it like 25% of kids end up being spies or something. I mean, like, this is super normal.
Right.
Oh, man. So many people's parents end up being spooks.
It's just so crazy how many people... It's near... actually, if you look into it, almost everyone from every atrocity you've heard about in the news, or that was in a song like Billy Joel or I sang, We Didn't Start the Fire, has always been connected to some sort of... It's all them all the time.
Well, it wasn't... the dude from the door, Jim Morrison's dad, he was a military intelligence guy. And if you look at like the Doors and the weird stuff they were into, there's some the Doors, the Mamas and the Papas, a lot of those bands from the time.
All of them.
Yeah.
It's insane. But they are, and that's been it's been a problem. The single greatest thing you could do for world peace is to disband the CIA and the FBI.
Yeah.
The single greatest thing that would like everything would stop. It would be amazing. Mm-hmm. People would just like go about their lives and not be constantly psyoped over and over and over again and driven into insanity. But that's difficult to do since they also like rig the elections in their favor and everything.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
The last president that came out openly to take down the intelligence agencies in a big way was JFK, and they killed him.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and he died.
And Trump sort of flirted with that idea, and he got his election overthrown.
But when I was reading that from David Hogg, I just felt like the green glow of the CIA burning my eyes through the screen.
That is wild that he was posting that.
It's like, it made it easier to accept all the kids I wouldn't see anymore because they went to work for quote unquote the government. Just crazy that all these Parkland kids are also now spies I never see again.
Amazing. Are you walking around the room in there? What are you doing?
I'm rustling around in bed. I'm getting more comfortable.
Put the microphone closer to your head.
I had to sit. I always bed. I'm starting a new thing where I try to bedcast.
Okay.
Because podcasting makes it sound like I want to live in a pod.
Right.
And I don't want to live in the pod or eat the bugs.
No.
I'm bedcasting.
Okay.
You know, like you got to watch the language you use because they're getting you. With your, you're consenting to it by saying podcasting. So I'm bedcasting.
I'm farmcasting.
Right, exactly. See? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that the Brooklyn shooter may be a David Hogg situation. Mm-hmm. Not sure. It might be. But
well, apparently he's surrendered and is being charged on federal terrorism charges, so there's going to be a court case.
Well, yeah, but there was a court case for the George Floyd guy too, and that was all. He's just like living in Argentina now.
Right.
I mean, and what's his name? See how pointless this all is. I don't even remember the kid's name. That was the Waukesha man.
Wait, Waukesha, the guy, that guy? Yeah, that's
Wooga.
You're talking about Waukesha, where the guy ran down the parade. He was another Kill Whitey guy.
The white kid with the AR and the gloves. Was on trial for shooting a child rapist or something in the Black Lives Matter parade.
Dude, I have... Oh, Rittenhouse.
Yeah. Now, see how pointless it is. I don't know. His name just went away. as you know, because he's totally unimportant.
Right.
But it's just like how
overwritten.
Rittenhouse had a trial, and then in the trial they showed you that it was a green screen because the guy's boot went through the floor.
The guy's boot did go through the floor. I mean,
And
that threw the whole thing into question for me when I saw that.
yeah, it's always made up. What's his name is also he probably it was a classmate of David Hogg that has gone into I don't know, whatever they say. You know, I think they say into remission in the CIA community. Like when someone has to disappear on an op for a long time, they go, "Oh, they're in remission." Makes it sound like I think that's the code.
Like they have cancer or something.
Yeah, like that explains. That's a convenient excuse for why you don't see them anymore.
Okay.
Because they're like, oh, they're in remission, and that means they, went away, or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure, but I am skeptical of this Brooklyn shooter guy because it sounds like another. It's just the race angle. I'm skeptical of all the eternal grievance setup machine.
Yeah.
Which is, it's like you do stuff now. This is why it's an occurring cycle. People do things now so that they will be perceived as good in whatever that means. And then in 10 years' time, that is portrayed, what they did to be perceived as good is portrayed as yet another example of their continued evil. So they have to do a new thing. Right? Like Black Panther, the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the movie?
Yeah.
When it came out, it was like, this is great. It's good for black people. They're represented finally in the media. Right? But then, and everyone, even black people were like, yeah, this is great. Black power. But if you actually watch the movie, the so-called most advanced black society, they still walked around half naked carrying spears.
They did? I didn't watch the movie.
Yeah, they had like techno spears.
Okay.
and then their government operated on trial by combat.
Uh-huh.
And immediately descended into civil war. So, could you be more racist, really? And so they get people to cheer for it, like, yeah, this is great. And then like 10 years later, they'll be like, why Black Panther was yet another example of systemic white racism. And they're right. It was an extremely racist movie, but no one paid attention to that because they get caught up in whatever the narrative is.
Wait, is that the take? Is that the take on Black Panther now? It was racist.
No, it's not yet, but it will be soon.
It will be soon.
Because it's obviously racist.
Yeah,
It's obviously racist that the black people in their most advanced society walk around half naked carrying spears still.
Right.
It's just, it's obviously, it's just what it obviously is. And so when people are like, it's just like the new Netflix show, I forget the one it is, but they were trying to do a thing where like they had more diversity characters.
Oh, the Lord of the Rings prequel?
No. It's not set in fantasy.
No.
I forget the name of it. But they had this one character she's like this intellectual lady, and she's real smart, and she's artistic and talented. And she's black, right? And she's like the love interest.
Okay.
And this white guy is talking to her, and he's like, I'm going to try to guess what you're painting, because he can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's painting on a canvas facing away from him. And he lists all these things, and whatever. And the black lady's just like smiling at him. And finally she turns the picture around, and it's literally a painting of bananas. And it's just like because they do that. What they do is they want you to cheer for the racism now.
Wait.
And they'll say, "Oh no, this is progressive." And then later they'll flip it back and be like, "See how racist you were?" And you are because you're being stupid. Because you're letting people just tell you what isn't racist.
This is why I don't watch TV.
Right. It's the eternal grievance setup. It's like the United Methodists trying to be really progressive in the civil rights era by setting up an African American Methodist church.
Okay.
And they were like, "This is great, right? We're doing great." And everyone was like, yay, Methodist, they're so not racist. And now they're like, you set up a whole separate segregated church for black people?
Yeah.
Like, oh,
interesting.
whoopsies.
Yeah, because at the time
They always
were,
get... Yeah, it's because if you play into the narrative is always a lie. And it will always be flipped back on you later for more to feed the grievance machine, to get you to do something else. And so it's like the word retard. Like, that used to be the clinical word for a thing that was nice. Like, they would call them imbeciles, and then imbeciles wasn't good anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That was tainted. So they're like, what about retarded? And this is great. We'll all be nice, progressive people and call everyone with challenges retarded. Right. And then that became... See, then that gets flipped, and now that's not good. And then you call them special. And then special's no good anymore, because that... And then they're differently abled. And soon differently abled won't be good anymore. So, and it's just this eternal cycle of, like, believing a narrative that doesn't make sense. Or like colored people. Somehow that's bad, but people of color is okay. And the people really believe that, and they're because they're retarded.
No, they're differently abled. I'm going to start saying that.
The people are differently abled who believe that makes sense. That calling people colored people is bad, but people of color is okay. It's just literally the words flipped over. It's nothing.
So maybe the goal is like I should operate one wave out of phase with whatever the cycle is. So I should be either calling everybody retarded or differently abled as a insult, and never say anything as special.
I think we just call them Wakandans. We just call it, like, if someone with Down syndrome is from Wakanda.
So you're sort of synthesizing the whole thing.
So you said bring it all together. Right. Yeah, it's my unified theory of anti-racism.
So if you wait a minute. So Black Panther isn't racist yet, but it's going to be racist in the future.
Of course it will be. Because it obviously has the ability to be attacked from a racial lens, because they made it so weird about how they portray. They can never portray an ethnic group as, like, just hanging out in regular clothes and doing things. They're always like doing the tribal dance.
No, yeah, they can't do it. Yeah,
they
never
dance,
do it.
But with a spaceship. It doesn't. It's so stupid. They can't just, and so it obviously has the fuel on the fire for that. And I don't know. You give it like 5 years, just like Hamilton was this big progressive thing, and now people are writing articles about how that play is problematic.
Really?
Oh yeah.
That's quick.
The turnaround becomes faster as these things progress. But yeah, the Hamilton, the diverse musical with representation problems. They're already writing this. The musical ignores numerous examples of slave ownership.
Oh no!
Right. Including so you can never, and Hamilton is a racist movie or a racist play because it it's through depicting everyone as black, it is ignoring the fact that a lot of people that were black were actually enslaved, and so you could spin it the other way and be like, look, this is why you just have to be accurate about what happened,
right?
And just be like, I don't care, if you that's like the Negro Leagues of baseball. Remember those?
Yeah,
back in the day. Mm-hmm. That was started. It's the same as the Eternal Grievance Machine all over again. Because they were like, listen, black people need to also play baseball. And they're like, fine, they can have baseball. And they play baseball. And then what happened was actually, the narrative is completely backwards to what actually happened. More people started going to the Negro League games because they were more popular. Because the black people would be like more into it. Yeah. You know, like Babe Ruth was sort of like stoic, and he'd hit the bomb, but right. Yeah, here we go, and they'd be like, "Whoa, I did it!" You know, when they'd cheer, and everyone would go, and it was great. And so actually, Jackie Robinson was a sellout because they bought him over to the white leagues to get more fans.
Really?
Yeah.
So desegregating baseball. Wait. You're telling me the desegregation of baseball was because segregated black baseball was out competing white baseball in
Oh yeah, 100%.
fan count.
Yeah, 100%.
And so they desegregated to shut down a successful black enterprise.
Exactly. And then later that gets used against, and so it's always this eternal grievance machine.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
I know, that's true. And white people, the white people that do all this stuff are excellent at just manipulating stories about what happened. They just lie.
This is why, I don't know if you call it clear-pilled or whatever, this is why I just don't care about racism anymore. Because it's
all
so
fake.
ridiculous. Like, if somebody... I just don't care anymore. I don't care. I don't care if you call me a racist. I don't care if somebody was mean to you. I just don't care. I don't care. And I'll never care again. Because this is so dumb.
Well, it's a very similar thing to Black Wall Street. Are you familiar with Black Wall Street?
Yeah, that was in Oklahoma City or somewhere out there in Midwest.
Oklahoma City. And then part of the integration was because black people in America were actually doing so well, people feared they may break away and have like some degree of independence.
Uh-huh.
So they just said, well, this can't work. So we'll merge everything together to prevent them. I mean, everything went down for the black community after desegregation. Education scores went down.
Yeah.
Their representation in higher trades went down and in professions.
Mm-hmm.
Their divorce rates skyrocketed. It was all bad for them. And that was on purpose because what they had going was working. And so then they attacked it.
Yeah.
And said, this is all. And then everyone plays into the narrative. And then Martin Luther King gets up there. And he's a Judas goat, willingly leading his people to destruction.
It was objectively, the civil rights era and desegregation ended up being a disaster in almost every metric for black Americans.
Yeah.
I mean, on the law, and you can't even deny it. And people will come up with reasons for that and like, oh, well, it's racism or whatever. But, the people that were cheering for all this really did destroy a thriving black culture and civilization that had its own industry, that had its own financial systems, that had its own educational systems, that had its own sports and culture creation and all that stuff. And forced desegregation destroyed all of that.
Oh yeah. I mean, like used to, black people would just go to the Methodist church. And then after desegregation, they said, you know what? It would be less racist if we gave them their own church.
Yeah.
That was just for blacks. And then that just destroyed. It's so stupid. But everyone plays into these narratives all the time because they just get guilted by media and propaganda over and over again. And people like David Hogg and his dad.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to develop immunity to that. It's just like, this is what this show is trying to do. I'm trying to help you develop immunity to iocane powder. And not fall for these stupid things. But it doesn't work.
And it is sad because the people that get all worked up about racism and trying to fix it and fix civilization, they end up either doing more damage than anybody for everybody, or they end up being called racist the hardest. Like it's a no win. You cannot win this game. It's a game that everybody loses all the time.
They lose all the time. And that's why that's why I'm somewhat suspicious that this Brooklyn guy is not even real. It's just another flip of the switch. Maybe not. I don't know.
We'll see.
But,
we'll see.
Yeah, but I believe you had a game that we're gonna play.
I want to ask you some questions because I've been, especially after last week's show, talking about health and sanitation and sewage and civilization. I loved the quip, civilization being the art of living in cities without dying of cholera.
Yeah, I think that's a quip that I made up, but not really. I'm not sure. I think I added cholera onto something that someone else said.
Okay.
But I don't know.
Either way, great quip. And so I've been thinking about that all week, and I want to do a little quiz here for a few minutes. So,
okay.
And this is getting back to our sort of survival, our occasional series on survivalism topics. If the water, let's say if the water turns off at your house
Okay, water's off.
What are you gonna do? How are you gonna stay home and not? What's your plan? What's your plan to not end up in the camp?
Well, my plan is that I have a 50-gallon drum of water in the basement already.
Ah, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I've already planned for that.
Right. So that'll last you maybe a week if you're frugal.
Well, you know. Okay, so I have my 50-gallon drum, right?
Yeah.
And it runs out.
Yeah.
Well, then I also live near a pond.
Okay. Yeah.
So why can't I get water from the pond?
Maybe you can.
Right.
Now, is there a creek running into this pond from somewhere?
No, it's completely stagnant. It's just stagnant water. But I thought I'd boil it, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you can boil it, and maybe you can make a filter. So, what if the power goes out and you can't boil the water? What do?
I have a chimenea.
Okay.
And I could boil it over the chimenea.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, one time I got the chimenea. I had it on the back of my. You know, I live in like a cluster of houses.
And
I was like, I want to start a fire. So I started the chimenea, and I put some fuel into it, and I was like, this isn't hot. So I kept throwing more into it, and then it sort of took off. You know.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where like there was a 6-foot flame jetting out of the top of the chimenea.
Yeah.
And it was like catching the tree on fire overhead. And my neighbors were all upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they thought I'm going to burn all of our houses down. But I don't think they had my artistic vision.
No.
Because I've never seen this. I did. It was so hot. It was insane. The clay of the chimney permanently changed color.
Yeah.
It was like a brown, and now it's like a red, like a blood red. So I could boil stuff in that.
Well, a chimenea is just a rocket stove that you didn't set up right. Do you know what a rocket stove is?
No, but I could see it because it did look like a rocket.
Well, if you just put the fuel source, like if you just cut long sticks and put the fuel source up in the shaft of the chimney rather than down in the bowl, it will make a very fast, powerful fire that's drawing air in through the front like a rocket or like a jet engine.
Oh, it's like an air fryer.
Yeah, and so you can set a grate or something up on the top and boil water on top of it or cook on top of it. Yeah.
So I'm good. This is how I do it.
That's good. You've got a plan.
Yeah. So okay, I solved the water issue. Mm-hmm. Next.
What are you gonna do with your sewage if let's say the sewer system that your house is connected to backs up?
Okay, the sewer system is backed up.
What are you gonna do with all of the poop?
Well, I guess you would try to eat less.
Yeah, there might be less poop, but you still got to deal with it.
I guess you would go out into the woods and dig a little hole. Don't you think?
You can do that, but quickly your hole's gonna fill up with you're gonna have like piles of poop everywhere.
Well, yeah, I think you just make a different hole after that one gets filled.
You gotta do better.
Fill it up, and then you cycle back after a couple of months, and that one's good to go again.
Do you have the tools and know how to dig a deep outhouse somewhere?
I have a set of post hole diggers. That's probably pretty good at digging a hole.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, I could dig a decent hole with that.
Okay.
How far down does it need to be? What?
It depends on how close you are to the water table and how much water drains through the area and everything. But you want to put your
15 feet.
If you can get it real deep down in the clay layer,
yeah,
where the bacteria can it can ferment down there and not like get messed up into the groundwater. Because if it's too shallow, every time it rains, the water's going to wash through there, and that groundwater runoff is going to carry fecal bacteria down to your pond.
Well, that's why I always boil the water out of the pond.
Yeah.
So it's always clean.
Okay, great. So,
okay,
how are you gonna?
I'm scoring. Scoring 100.
You're coming up with some decent answers here. I mean, they're labor intensive. You should have tools, and you should maybe look into how to dig.
Well, also though,
15-foot hole in the ground.
Another one though, my neighbor across the way is really old.
Yeah.
Probably going to die pretty rapidly in this scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I could just poop like in their house, and it could just be in their house. Like they'd be in one room just sort of rotting. And I would have the other room would be like the poop room.
Yeah.
And then when it gets too stinky, you just burn it down.
Are you on a septic system, or are you on a
sewer?
County sewer. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
so,
those of us on septic systems, you can technically just keep using that if there's not a pump involved.
Oh yeah, just rub it in our faces.
You just have to supply water to the plumbing system to get the stuff to wash down.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's what I would be sort of doing with my neighbor's house, really, if you think about it.
Just turn it into the septic system.
Yeah, it would just become the septic system, and they would be sort of, because I'm not going to bury them. You know how hard it is to dig a grave.
Well, I mean, you're going to have to dig a outhouse.
Well, yeah. Well, no. In this scenario, I'm just using their house as the outhouse.
Okay.
Their whole house.
Yeah.
Right. Because it would take a long time to fill up a house with poop.
That's true. And eventually the floor would rot out, and then by that point you could mine the house where the house used to stand for fertilizer.
Yeah. Perfect.
I mean, it's a long-term goal.
Making the future garden.
So I was reading about experiments with composting human waste for agricultural purposes. And apparently if you isolate the stuff so it doesn't run off into the watershed, and you let it compost for a year or more, all the bad bacteria and stuff and parasites will die, and it makes great fertilizer. Now,
did they test this with also an old woman's dead body in the mix?
Yeah, well, you can throw other stuff in there too. Apparently, it really helps
because
if you add,
in my head, she's just she falls through the rotting floor. Also,
this is awful scenario.
Well, what am I going to do with her in this scenario? Like, what am I going to do?
So, if the house is on a crawl space,
raccoons,
it would contain all the stuff.
I could throw her outside and give her a sky burial where she's just eaten by birds.
Right. Now, give her a proper Christian burial. Don't be lazy.
I can't
dig a hole.
The ground around my house is very hard. It's like on the side of a cliff.
You could do a pile of rocks burial. Do you have rocks?
I have rocks. Okay. You just cover them with rocks?
Well, that's another real survival issue for people that are going to be staying in the suburbs for the duration of this imaginary disaster. Is that what are you going to do with all the dead bodies? Because
well, let me tell you this.
That's another disease issue.
I live in a place whose Native American name, before the white man came and renamed it, was the Buzzard's Roost.
Oh.
So I think if we just leave the people outside, nature will take care of it.
Sky burials. Okay.
There's plenty of turkey vultures and all sorts of carrion everywhere.
Right.
So I think that, we leave the people outside, and then later we come back and collect the bones and put them in make a little chandelier or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's deer everywhere rotting near my house, and we don't have issues with groundwater.
You just leave them outside the way God intended you to be buried.
Well, that reminds me of David the Good's book, Compost Everything. And his big...
just throw it on the ground.
Throw it on the ground. So dead people, just throw them on the ground.
Throw Granny on the ground.
It's a little undignified.
A little bit. But, she got mad at me one time for my dog pooping in her lawn, So
it's justified?
If I throw her corpse out on the street to be eaten by birds, it seems pretty equal.
Okay. Well...
all things considered.
So,
actually, and there was another lady. She didn't do this to me. But, people have gone insane. And this other family was walking, and they, touched her lawn. And she, ran out and sprayed the mother of this baby with a wasp spray.
Are you kidding me? This happened in your neighborhood?
Yeah. And then, a German shepherd across the way, joined in and, started mauling one of them. I think it mauled the lady with the wasp spray, even though the dog wasn't the dog of the lady that was sprayed. It was just like, here's a chance for me to maul something.
Holy cow.
Which is what a German Shepherd always wants. So there's a lot of people in my neighborhood who I think maybe deserve a sky burial.
Okay.
Is what I'm saying.
I mean,
I don't think it would be unjust.
Maybe they do.
I don't think it would be unjust, yeah.
I think for the suburbs, if you know, bad thing happens, it's going to be rough for like a couple of months, and there's going to be a lot of violence and death, but then after that it's going to be kind of chill. After
everyone that needs to die off dies off, it'll be much more chill.
Equilibrium is attainable. And you know what? I think that we were talking about cities last week, and I think that in addition to the car, by extension, the suburbs are responsible for how nice cities are now. Because you've got workforce that can work in the city and do all that labor, but they have the means to not live in the city, so you can spread everybody out, and you don't have to have the complicated infrastructure services. So
it's really just about spreading out the poop.
Yeah.
It's about spreading out the sewage over a large enough area where it's, dilution is the solution to pollution, as they say.
Yeah.
In chemistry class. Dilution, you make everything spread out enough. Mm-hmm. If you pile it all in one area, it's too much.
Well, the Aztecs had some interesting solutions for this. And I'm not quite exactly sure how they got around disease issues, but I'll tell you what they did. So there were these large, shallow lakes all over the place in the Mexico Valley. Uh-huh. And so that they would build artificial islands in the lake with the mud from the bottom of the lake, which was extremely fertile. And then they would also, the waste from the village would be distributed on these islands, and they would farm them. And so they would take a little canoe out to the island to do their farming, which I think would probably protect it from a lot of nuisance animals. Because the bunnies aren't going to swim over there and eat all their vegetables, rodents and things. Right. And it ended up being really cool. And you said you have a pond near your house. This is something that you could do if it's not too deep.
I could have a Quetzalcoatl island.
It's called a chinampa. It's called a chinampa.
Yeah.
And so what they did was they drive posts into the ground out in the water, and then they would scoop up the mud from the bottom of the lake and throw it in this ring of posts until the mud heaped up and made an island, and then they would garden on them. And the one thing, even if you don't do this, if you just gather mud from the bottom of the pond and put it in your garden, it will be great gardening soil and very fertile.
This sounds pretty mucky.
Yeah, there's a lot of muck and slime in being a survival agrarian. But if you want to stay out of the camp, these are the things you're going to have to adapt to.
Maybe. I don't know. I like the idea of just turning my dead neighbors into a garden.
You can do that
over time. Yeah, that sounds less mucky.
So I thought
you probably would smell after a while. All right, so I passed. I've got an A+ so far.
You've done pretty well.
Scoring.
You've done pretty well. So
what else do I have?
All these questions and comments are based on just reading I've been doing about survivalism type of things, because I kind of want to continue that discussion. But one of the problems is once you start going into a segment like that, it just ends up being this long list of instructions, which I don't want to do. It's bad radio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up some papers on the website at mapsoc.org in the show notes, and there'll be the interesting articles that I've read. One of them is from the CD3WD project, which was a very cool project done back in the 80s, I believe, where they wanted to distribute, or maybe it was in the 90s, they wanted to distribute hard copies of everything that the third world needed to first world itself. And so it's this giant library of very cool information. So I'm going to link that, and there's a particular one about sewage that I'm going to link. Also, reading about rabbits, because at Farm Smokestack, we were thinking about adding some rabbits. And you can do, you don't have to build hutches. You can do them in a colony on the ground. And there are some really clever ways to keep them from escaping and burrowing out. And it looks like it would really work well. So I'm going to post that up there too, and the article about the Chinampa Islands. So go to mapsoc.org and check out the show notes if you're interested in those topics.
I've been studying the work of Andrew Uckles.
What does he do?
He was a YouTuber. He stopped. I don't know why. But he would show you the art of catching. He was an Australian guy, of catching wild animals barehanded.
Awesome.
Like, not with any weapons, just running after them. And it was fantastic. And I felt like this is a really survival skill. Like he has one where he catches a deer with antlers. Like he paints himself up in mud near a watering hole and just waits for and then fast forwards because he's waiting for 7 hours. You know, and then this deer comes by and he just jumps out of the bushes and runs after it. And he disappears off screen for an hour. And then an hour later you hear and he's dragging this deer by the head back into the shot going, come on baby, come on. And then he wrestles it down and he starts petting it and he's like, oh, good. And then he's screaming, settle. And then he just lets it go. And that's, I think, what we need to channel that energy.
I mean, I could see you doing this.
Yeah, I know. That'd be awesome. He also, I thought of him because you were bringing up rabbit hutches in the ground. Mm-hmm. And my favorite video of him, he's got this Australian accent. And he's walking around picking up what is the most dangerous snake in Australia? The black one.
Mamba.
Yeah, the black. He's walking around picking up black mambas, right?
Oh man.
Just in the outback with his hands, and he's barefoot, right? And he's just wearing a pair of shorts, no shirt, right? And he's got 2 black mambas in each hand.
Oh.
And he's walking around just completely calm, and he looks at the camera and goes, "All right, mate. Today I'm going to teach you how to catch rabbits using snakes." And then he goes to this rabbit den. And he's like, the trick of catching rabbits is you got to know they have more than one exit, see? So he starts plopping the black mambas into the rabbit holes. And then he just waits and puts little nets over the other holes he has not placed the snake in. And in about 15 minutes, the rabbits come jumping out of the holes to get away from the black mambas into his nets. And then he's like, see, there you go. And then he just lets the rabbit go too, because he doesn't eat any of them. He just likes to catch them. It's the most brilliant YouTube content that's ever been made. And maybe the best one. I said that was the best. No, one is where he catches a kangaroo dressed as an emu. So he walks along this dirt road in the middle of the outback, right, until he finds a dead emu that's been hit by a car, and then he, like Luke Skywalker, hollows it out with a knife. And just drapes the emu carcass over his body with the head on a stick so he can hold it up like it's still there and turn it. Okay. Like it's looking around. And then he waltzes up to a flock of emus who are letting him get close, but they're also a little suspicious of is that Gary? Something's wrong with Gary. Because Gary is a carcass being worn by a human man, right? But he still looks a little emu-ish, to an emu.
Yeah.
And he does this, and he gets out in the middle of the outback until he gets near enough kangaroos, and then he just throws off his emu suit and jumps onto a wild kangaroo. And it's the best thing I've ever seen. And I feel like this guy is going to survive in whatever happens.
He is going to survive. He's going to do great, man. What is this guy's name? The
greatest part of all of his content is he's doing it. The whole time he's doing it as a tutorial, as though someone else is going to go out and do this. He's like, today I'm going to show you how you can catch a wild kangaroo dressed as an emu. First thing you got to do, and he has a very detailed instructions about how to hollow out the emu and stuff.
I'm going to link this in the survival links. What's this guy's name?
Oh, it's great. And he got wild honey one time, right? And he did this by finding a goat carcass, skinning it, and making a suit that he wore. He said, this is how the Aboriginals used to get the honey. And he coated himself in a skin-tight goat jumpsuit, right? Okay. That he's just made from a goat carcass. And it's protecting his vital organs and genitals from bee stings. Okay?
And then he just goes to an Australian killer bee hive, and he just sticks his hands into it, starts pulling out honey. And he's just screaming, going, ah, 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 getting honey. Because they're still stinging all the parts of him that aren't covered by goat.
Oh, man.
Right? And then he gets the honey, and then he like passes out like a honey badger that's been stung by a scorpion in the mud while the camera's rolling. Right? And then later he gets up and is like, it worked. So I don't know. But
it worked.
That's if 1 in 100 Aussies was actually like that spirit, they would have never locked down.
Yeah. That's the spirit the Aussies need to
that's the true Australian spirit.
On.
That's that's crikey.
Okay,
I'm always looking for crikey.
Send me this guy so I can link him.
Some people, on the West Coast, they have this thing called looking for. They talk about how they're looking for aloha.
Uh-huh.
Because like peace, the Hawaiian term. I'm always looking for crikey.
Crikey.
Right. Like that spirit is what I try to embody.
Yeah.
Not necessarily aloha.
I think you're on your way.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. But are you familiar with Minecraft?
Yeah, the game.
Yeah, so there's this game called Minecraft.
Heard of it?
Pretty big deal, really. It's probably the most popular video game ever created. I mean, it's debatable. I mean, Super Mario, maybe. But that's had a longer time to be popular. Because that's like 35 years old or whatever. But Minecraft was made in like 2011 or something, really. And the guy that made it, Notch, is his name. Is his online name anyway. I think his real name is like Marcus Sweden man.
Okay.
He sold it to Microsoft for $2 billion.
Are you kidding me?
No, $2 billion. And it was funny because like in 2013 or whatever, people were trying to buy his game, and he was like, it's a creative project for me. I'm never going to sell it. And people kept pestering him. He was like, okay, fine. I'll sell it for $2 billion. Just being like outlandish. Uh-huh. And then like 3 years later, Microsoft said, okay, here's $2 billion. He's like, okay, I guess I'll sell it. So he sold it for $2 billion.
Oh, man.
And Minecraft is, we've talked about it before on the show. It's this interesting game where it's like Legos, digital Legos, and you make things out of blocks, right? Mm-hmm. But it has this property in survival mode. See the segue?
Yeah, that's good.
Survival mode. It has this in survival mode at night, because the day has day and night cycles. Monsters called mobs spawn in the darkness. Right? So like daylight dispels them. Any monsters that are still out after the sun comes up are burned alive in a matter of minutes, like they catch fire. But if they're like under the shade of a tree or in your house or in a cave, in any sort of place dark enough, they can stay alive and they don't burn. And one of the ways that you keep your house safe from monsters spawning in a big enough house, like you're just in your kitchen, is you have it well lit. Like you put up candles everywhere. And if you put up candles over like the whole earth, monsters can never spawn. And so people will just like, for years, they'll have the same Minecraft game and they'll just put a candle like every 7 blocks, like candle. And that keeps any monsters from ever coming. And so they monsters spawn in any sufficiently darkened place, right? And my contention on this show is that this is the same reason that Arthur was cuckolded by Lancelot. Right, it's the same thing.
I think you're going to have to draw some connections for the audience here.
I'm going to do it. Yeah. It's metaphysical, because this idea of monsters spawning in the darkness is metaphysically true in our actual reality.
Okay.
That's my claim. In other words, there is a reason, a real metaphysical and probably physical, honestly, reason why Nessie doesn't exist in a pond. But why there's lake monsters but not pond monsters. And why there are sea monsters, right? And why Bigfoot always has to live like far off in the woods. He can't live in the bushes of a cul-de-sac in Van Nuys.
Right.
He has to live way off in the dark woods. And it is because, okay, here's my theorem, if you're ready, is that because consciousness is what actually brings the world into existence, right? And that these things are actually fragmented, disjointed pieces of consciousness that are manifesting in the real world.
It's pretty weird.
And I'm gonna sort of prove it to you.
Okay.
Not really prove. That may be a strong statement.
You're gonna make the concept coherent.
I'm gonna make the concept coherent. So, in other words, if no one was conscious, nothing would ever exist.
Okay.
Right? I think that is sort of logically sound. Like we said at the beginning of the show, there once was a man who said, God, I find it exceedingly odd to think that a tree continues to be when there's no one about on the quad. Dear sir, your astonishment's odd. I am always about on the quad, and that's why the tree continues to be since observed by yours faithfully God. That's obviously a limerick by Ronald Knox. Are you familiar with him?
I think so.
Yeah, he was a priest and a theologian in the early 1900s. He's maybe the patron saint of the show because he also had a philosophical religious radio show. But he was also decided to use, while he was a religious man, right? Mm-hmm. He was in religious orders and stuff. Decided to nonetheless use his show to punk the public into believing there was a revolution occurring in London, which caused a minor panic. Right.
This guy sounds great.
He timed it specifically on a snowy weekend when newspapers wouldn't be able to be delivered, so that he couldn't have a counter narrative dispel his shame. Uh-huh. And then he got on his radio show and told people there was a giant workers' union uprising and the city would soon be in flames. And that wasn't true, but nonetheless, he was a bored priest who needed some kicks, and I honor that level of trolling. That's fine. That actually inspired Orson Welles to do his War of the World broadcast.
Really?
Orson Welles
okay.
talked about that. Yeah, he talked about that in his biography, actually. He said, I'm going to do that, but with space aliens. Mm-hmm. So anyway, Ronald Knox thought a lot about consciousness and its role in existence. And that's why he did that limerick. And so anyway, the proof of this idea is that reality cannot exist without conscious observers is imagine a universe in which there were no conscious observers. Okay. How would you prove it existed?
Well, who would you prove it to either? I mean...
Exactly. You can't, because the instant you did anything to prove its existence, you would observe it and thereby interject the consciousness into that which was presupposed not to be there. So it is practically and theoretically impossible to have a universe that you can prove exists in which there is no conscious observer.
Okay.
It's not, and that's actually more than a clever thought experiment. That's like how things are. Like this is. You can't do it because it's impossible, right? And this is the fundamental flaw with all this prehistoric history talk, like presupposing the lifeless Earth with some primordial goo and lightning or whatever. You've got like maybe a volcanic landscape, and with lightning bolts and some goo, and like Neil deGrasse Tyson standing over it looking suspicious, in these models, and that can never, even in principle, be shown to exist, because if this idea that there's no one there makes it effectively impossible. So when we speak of the prehistoric past, all we're doing is we're looking at what we perceive to be trend lines, like saying, like, this is the way things seem to have been going, and then we're projecting them backwards and backwards and backwards a long, long time and saying, well, if we'd been there back then, this is what things would have looked like, but we weren't, so it wasn't. That makes sense?
Sort of.
So it's like you can't ever come up with a scenario in which there's a universe or even anything in which there is not also a conscious observer.
Yeah, okay.
To some degree.
All right.
It's not, it's inseparable. Or to use another limerick, if objects depend on our seeing, so that trees unobserved would cease treeing, then my question is, who is the one that sees you and assures your persistence in being? Dear sir, you reason most oddly. To be is to be seen for the bodily, but for spirits like me, to be is to see sincerely the one who is godly. You see, huh? That's the Berkeley limericks.
So the
big history.
So
there.
is the claim here is that your consciousness, or you continue to exist even when you're unconscious because God sees you?
Because that's like this overarching consciousness of existence. Like that's what the last line is. To be is to be seen for the bodily, but for spirits like me, to be is to see sincerely the one who is godly. So that's why light is the first thing created. Like let there be light, consciousness, right? When one is spiritually awake, we say they're enlightened, full of light. In fact, like they may have a glow about them, as like Moses did, or a halo, right? Or at least be depicted with one. And that is because light and consciousness are interrelated. Like if you're in a room and it's pitch black dark, you are by definition unconscious of everything else in the room. You can't see it. You don't know what's there.
Right.
The light has to be brought to your eyes to be made conscious.
Okay.
Right? And consciousness is just a newfangled word for what the ancient people were talking about when they said soul. Mm-hmm. It's not like 100% overlap between those words, but it's pretty close.
Okay.
Right? So, consciousness is existence. Like, it calls things into existence in a super real way. Like, not in a metaphor. Like, quantum physics started bumping up against this in the early 20th century. And everyone got hella spooked out and backed off. Because they were like, hey, this is getting a little too woo here, guys.
What happened? What happened in physics that made them back off?
Well, I mean, like, the observer phenomenon, like where people were beginning to see that, actually reality works different when you look at it versus when you do not.
Right, yeah.
And that is a big problem, that's a big, that questions all of our underlying assumptions about how science works and about reality.
Yep.
And so people were like, stop doing that. Like the presidents of the universities were like, listen here, you physicists. I like my math like I like my women. Complex and imaginary. We've had quite enough of this transcendental and irrational stuff with the number pi, thank you very much. Please go back to banging billiard balls together or playing with electricity or whatever. No more of this exotic stuff, right? And so they did. Like, that's what happened. Society was like, this is a bit weird. Not just the presidents of universities. Like, society was like,
yeah.
We really just sort of dropped those lines of inquiry because it was getting too spooky. Because truly, quantum stuff was beginning to border on magic.
Yeah.
And that's why today, stuff like at the CERN particle accelerator, you got people doing weird rituals to Shiva.
Yeah.
The Hindu god of destruction in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. Because what else can you do, really? That you're doing it by even doing particle acceleration, you are entering into that realm.
Well, I guess like, I'm operating under the assumption here that they're actually doing anything over at CERN. But if they are, and those discoveries of physics are legit, then yeah, I mean, you couldn't, if the observer phenomenon and things like it do sort of compel the physicist to take a very woo-woo view of how the world works if they continue down that road.
Oh, yeah. Like, you can't get away from it. Because, like the double slit experiment, which is the most classic one, but there's others, was like, well, if you fire a photon at this, into two separate holes, if you don't look, it looks like a scatter shot. Mm-hmm. Right? Or I'm sorry, if you do look, it looks like a scatter shot, like BBs,
Yep.
Because if you're looking, reality had to decide which hole it went through. But if you don't look, you get an interference pattern. You get like waves. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't look, reality didn't have to decide. And so it went through all of them in equal measure. And they created a wave pattern. And that's really upsetting.
Is this the whole... Is the concept here that things exist as probabilities until
things exist in potential probabilities until a observer forces the wave function to collapse into an actual reality.
Okay.
And so all the potentials manifest. All the potentials. I wrote an article about this one time called Bigfoot is an Interference mm-hmm. Pattern. This is why Bigfoot's blurry. It's why you never get a clear picture of Bigfoot. Because he's actually an interference pattern in a strange way. Like, this is why all this stuff you can never properly resolve. It's always like on the fringes. It's on the penumbra of existence, because it is the potentials of what could exist in the unconscious, unobserved reality meeting up with collapsing into the wave function of an actual observer. So when you don't see anything, like in the dark, this is why Nessie has to be in the bottom of a dark lake. Bigfoot has to be in a house, like in a deep dark woods, and ghosts have to be in an empty, darkened house. Like, you can't ghost hunt in the middle of the day. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work, because you would see too much. Your consciousness would literally be too illuminated. You'd be observing too much. The wave functions would be set, like make choices, do this. When you don't see it, all the possibilities remain. And these things which are only hinted at can have manifestations in the darkness. Right? They exist. It's exactly like Minecraft. Right? The monsters exist where it is too dark. And that's why the game resonates. That's why a 4-year-old understands it. It's because monsters spawn in the dark. Right? 4-year-old goes, right, checks out. Complete and total sense. Mm-hmm. Darkness equal monster. Because intuitively we know this is true. Monsters do spawn in this dark. Which is why all occult rituals, seances, and so on have to be done with the lights off. You can't go see a medium in the park on a sunny afternoon. That won't work. And you can't get a tarot reading from some, like, soccer mom named Julie. It has to be, I mean, you can, but she doesn't know what she's doing. It has to be like some like weird blurry hag in the top of an attic somewhere, which is where the local tarot readings happen near me. So it's the same reason paranormal investigations have to be done at nighttime. All right, there's your answer, Richard Dawkins and Neil deGrasse Tyson, because they poo-poo all that stuff like, oh, they just got to be spooky for the TV. Why can't you do it at 10 in the morning? And the answer is because we would all see too well. Consciousness would be too great for these things which exist and manifest in the undifferentiated reality of potential to be observed or felt.
So is
this making sense?
Yeah. So is it visible observation that does this?
Visible observation
specifically
is the same thing as bringing it into your consciousness.
So I know that the ancient mind believed that the function of human sight actually projected out onto things. Like, it wasn't sight is not a purely receptive capability, but the mind could reach out through the eyes and like touch things in a way.
Yeah, and that's true. Like, because you are by reaching, when you see something, you are literally forcing it to be one way and not another. That's what the collapse of the wave function is. So when you have this is why Bigfoots can't manifest in the middle of a brightly in the middle of like a Home Depot or something.
So if you took a Bigfoot and put it in a Home Depot, what would it turn into?
It would vanish. It wouldn't. This is why you, in all these stories, this is why like the like black dog stories are famous for this. People see like a demonic black dog or something on the mists of the moors, and as daylight comes, though they've been cornered by this dog for like hours and petrified, it begins to dissipate with the mist. Begins to go away. Mm-hmm. That's why the Bigfoots, like, there are countless stories of people being like, I had a Bigfoot, captured it, I locked it up in the box, and then when I got someone to come look at it, it was gone. Or same with gray aliens.
So why doesn't the Bigfoot just disappear as the minute anybody, like, why do you ever see a fuzzy Bigfoot at all?
Right, because you're not seeing the whole thing. You're seeing because people seldom get like a clear picture of it.
Okay.
Just like they seldom get a clear picture of Nessie, they see like a glimpse, or of Mothman, or of shadow people, ghost. It's always in the corner of the eye. It's always something moving, and they have real effects. They may knock things over. They may open and shut drawers, but like you very rarely get the full-on apparition that you see straight on. And if you do, it's always very temporary. It's very like
okay. So
and then
let me ask you this: if you were to set up a camera to take pictures
mm-hmm.
of Bigfoot.
Yes.
would the camera capture anything, and would the footage on the camera change when a human mind or a human viewed the footage?
Well, I think that gets into Schrodinger's cat. I think that is the same question, because that's what he was struggling with this double slit experiment. So he was like, wait a minute, if it's the observer, that's like saying that you can have a cat and it's both alive and dead until you look, and that's silly. But then later he came around and was like, oh, actually, this is what this implies. And so I think you're running into the same problem. It's like, what is it recording? We don't know until we look, and then when we look, whatever happened is now different than what.
Well,
was.
I guess my question is more about technology. In that, is the camera capable of? Have we made a device that's capable of collapsing probabilities in making the camera?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's why occasionally you do get like things which are questionably ghosts on camera, because they will show up, but it's always like, I mean, some of them are quite good, really. Some of the images you can get are quite like pretty knock out of the park. That's a ghost, but it's like
so maybe we've made something that sort of does what we do, but not really, or does it halfway.
Well, according to Rupert Sheldrake, he did that experiment on, can you feel people staring at you, from behind, and the results of his experiments are very conclusive that you can, not super strong effect, but it's there. But he found that it also worked through CCTV. So, like, you could feel someone staring at you through a closed-circuit camera.
So, I want to know...
So, I think, yeah, maybe.
So, what if we staged that experiment again, but we recorded the people, and then some of the people, we would view the footage, and some of the footage would be destroyed after the fact? Would you be able to detect your observation from the future?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That we need to do that experiment. Because I'm not... Yeah, I don't know what that would be, and that may give us some insight into what's going on.
Because didn't some of the physics experiments along the lines kind of work that way? Like if you never viewed the footage, it wouldn't.
Right, and so this would be a similar test to see, like, is that further connected to our consciousness? Like, can you actually feel it in real time? And that would be a very interesting experiment to do. I suspect you maybe could, but I'm not 100% on that.
Is Sheldrake still around?
We
should write him an email and propose
this
variation of his experiment.
I probably will. Yeah, we'll call it the smokestack variation.
Yeah,
or something. So anyway, so I'm suggesting that, like, because this is, by the way, this is why Jesus' principal miracles, like his signature thing, is giving sight to the blind. Because this is a real physical thing he's doing, but it's also highly symbolic of something deeper. It's an opening of your conscious to the world. So, like, I'm here suggesting that monsters like Bigfoots, Big Feets, Nessies, Mothman, Shadow People, ghosts in many cases, and so on, are actually, in essence, and I use essence here like in the philosophical way, things like that, UFOs, greys, chupacabra, the cattle mutilation phenomena, and so forth. They are, in essence, no different than the disconjoined, like, disordered demons in our mind. It's the exact same thing. And they dwell in the exact same place. And you know that they are because all these paranormal encounters always have a dream-like quality to them. They're like nightmares come to life. And that's because that's exactly what they are. Like the cattle mutilation phenomena is a nightmare come into reality. Right? Or the being chased in the dark woods. That's just poof, it's there. Right? Because the dark recesses of the unconscious are the same thing as the dark recesses of a deep lake or a dark wood or a shadowy basement. It's the same thing. Because the same consciousness is perceiving and creating both. And so sometimes these monsters are present internally, but sometimes they are externalized, and they can have an external physical effects and manifestations to a degree that are surprising if you aren't used to the idea, so long as you can't see them very well. They have to be in the shadows, in the corners, just like in Minecraft. The daylight dispels them near instantly, right? And so they have to be in the places you can't see very well. And this is why the etymology, as I've mentioned before on the show, of demonstrate is monstrum or monster. To demonstrate is to demonster or unmonster.
Oh, okay.
So like the idea being that wisdom or understanding, truth, the light of consciousness, literally makes monsters vanish. Which is why a haunted place, once moved into sufficiently enough, known well enough, the monsters all go away. Like so many places in Ireland were once like avoided by the locals because of the fairies, which are, by the way, just red-headed harp-playing jinn. It's the same thing as the Arabic folklore. It's astonishingly similar. Right? And just as the Native Americans had many places they wouldn't go, but as population increased in a region and people built those cities out of necessity in these haunted places, slowly the hauntedness disappears. Like so many old West towns, when they were first founded, they have all these crazy stories of the people that lived there, like wild men in the desert, hoop snakes, land whales, just, all this crazy haunting things in the sky, but even dinosaurs and aliens, as we've discussed. But slowly, as it becomes more populated, more filled with consciousnesses, more observers, these things go away because they don't have room to be anymore. And it's not because they were never there, right? It's not because they were never there. Look, I've had encounters with monsters. Like if you want to see a monster for real, be all by yourself in the middle of the woods at 2 a.m. Frequently. And you'll hear weird things. And sometimes see weird things, like lights like dancing off, and they do like, what is that? It's not that can't be a like lightning bug. That's like a fire or something. Or you will hear like wood knocks, like bop, 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 just like the classic Bigfoot thing. Like something's out there trying to make some sort of communication. But as soon as the daylight comes back, all these things will go away. But in the middle of the night, if you're really out by the woods by yourself, like this sort of stuff can happen, which is why tribal people and people in quote unquote primitive places that spend a lot of time outside and alone and aren't constantly surrounded by others believe in this sort of stuff, and people that live in well-lit, popular environments where you're never alone and you're always under artificial lighting don't believe in any of this stuff because there's nowhere for them there's no dark corners for the monsters to spawn in.
So did some might argue that like rational materialism created modern civilization, but it may be the other way around, that urbanism created modernist materialism.
Yes. That's 100% right in my view. Because as you collect people into an area, less in their immediate vicinity goes unseen, unobserved, and so all of these things that exist in the peripheries of the wave function of existence cannot come forward, right? And this is not a new idea. Like this is like demon. The word Paul actually uses in the Bible is daemon. We translate the demon, and we think of that only as like invisible spirits that tempt you or whatever. And yes, but also like the Greek word demon or daemon at the time is exactly and explicitly referred to strange creatures seen on the edge of town. And lake monsters and wild, all that stuff they call daemons. It's the same exact thing because that's what it is. It's like very analogous to the Japanese idea of kami or whatever. It is the demon in your mind is the daemon out in the world. It's the same thing. They're just being externalized. Right? This is why. This is why. And this gets a little intense. As we said before, like an angel, and all an angel is, to be reductive, is a disembodied intelligence governing the operations of nature, right? Like people will be like, there's laws of nature. I'm like, okay, that's great. What makes sure they follow these laws?
Yeah.
It's an intelligence. And man is the culminating place where all these things sort of stack up together and are understood. And this is true of like spring, say if you want to, or the tides used to be thought to be governed by angels or gods, whatever you want to call it, right? So like the god of spring, and we don't notice that these things are intelligent because they are unfallen intelligences. So they're doing exactly what God wants them to do, eternally acting out God's will, right? The tides keep going because this is what they were made to do, and the intelligence that governs the tides and the moon is unfallen, and so it just does the thing it's supposed to do forever. And so that fades into the background because it's not changing. You think, oh, that's just going on autopilot. But really, it is an intelligence choosing to do it all the time, forever. Mm-hmm. And you don't notice this until one of these intelligences becomes disobedient, which is why the fall itself is a fall into time. That's why you leave the eternal. Because when things go off, if everything was operating as it was supposed to be, the seasons, there'd be changes, but it would be changing in an unchanging way. Yeah. There'd be an ebb and flow and the will of God would just be manifested forever and ever and ever. But when some go off kilter and they start doing other things, then you start going into things. You fall into the realm of change, which is what creates time. So you fall into time out of eternity, and demons are basically those fragmented, broken intelligences or consciousnesses, manifesting monstrously, only so long as they are not brought back into the light. It all makes sense. From Nessie, it's all the same thing.
Is this going back to sort of the inner mind thing? Mm-hmm. Is this why things like counseling are helpful? Is because you're in the mind bringing light to a dark place?
Yeah, exactly so. This is because you are shining light. There are monsters there that are plaguing you. And this is why people that have intense psychiatric episodes often also see encounters with strange beings, because it's the same thing. That thing that's plaguing them in the daytime in their mind is just manifesting physically at nighttime by their bedside. It's the same thing, right? Which is why people that are mentally disturbed often talk about seeing things, because the dark places of their mind are coming out into the real world. And the flip side of this is that your consciousness must also, a physical necessity, when you encounter the good or heavenly side of that which is beyond your understanding, must also be obscured. Right? So this is why it had to be, when Jesus was transfigured on the mountain, it had to be that Peter, James, and John experienced it as happening in the midst of a mist, of a cloud. Because it had to be obscured, because they literally couldn't see what was happening. They couldn't understand it. And so it had to be enshrouded. In the exact same way that Nessie has to be enshrouded in the darkness from the deep places to come up, Jesus had to be transfigured to take on heavenly form within a cloud, because that also comes from a place you can't see. It's just the other pole. It's the other side. And so anytime something comes to you which is beyond your consciousness, either ability or just can't be seen at the moment, it must come either from the shadows or be itself enshrouded. That's why it has to happen that way. There's no way around that. And so you see, it's all perfectly coherent. Nessie to the transfiguration is all part of one thing. Which brings us to King Arthur.
Okay, I was wondering we were going to get to King Arthur.
Okay. Now people don't like to bring it up every so often, but Arthur was in fact cucked by Lancelot. And everybody knew. That's the important part. So in Arthurian legend, actually, it's an open secret among the knights and most of the court, and in some versions of the story, perhaps even of Arthur himself, that Lancelot is having an affair with Guinevere. But nobody ever says anything about it publicly.
Okay.
So, at least for a long time. So in a real sort of way, it doesn't exist, at least at the social level. It's all in everybody's unconscious. It's all in the shadows. It's a monster, right? Brewing, that is eventually brought to light, and then all this bad stuff happens when the monster is brought to light. Arthur's forced to fight Lancelot, and so forth and so on, right? Who is in some ways, in some perverse ways, is also his best friend, right? And you get the sense that on one level, so Arthur knows, as does everybody else, but he's also rejecting it from rising to the level of his conscious mind. Like, it's there, but he's in denial about it. He's just pushing it aside, like, no, that's not real. Because then he'd have to do something about it, and things he doesn't want to do. It would mean losing his wife, his best friend, having to potentially fight to the death and fragment his kingdom, right? A lot of unpleasant things will happen. So he pretends it isn't happening. He allows himself not to notice. He really, literally turns a blind eye towards it, which is exactly what one eye symbolism is about. turning a blind eye.
Oh.
You blind one eye, right? It's looking the other way from evil, from the demonic. It's letting the monster exist because acknowledging the monster would be too scary. It's Jeffrey Epstein, it's Gitmo, Jerry Sandusky, Hunter Biden's laptop, WMDs. Everybody knows it, and yet the consequences of acknowledging it are too high, so we turn a blind eye to it and willfully forget. And that, my friends, that desire to turn a blind eye is what evil depends on and what allows monsters to breed and exist. Right? That's why they use it as their symbol, because they're depending upon that very thing. And that's why they all agree. Like when they do the ritual where they black out their eye or whatever, they're all agreeing to turn a blind eye to the evil. You see, and pretend it's not there.
I guess it was a few weeks ago when this stories were breaking about the discovery of a bunch of dead baby corpses that had basically been either killed at natural birth or after natural birth in an abortion sort of procedure. That's illegal to do that sort of thing, and exceptionally brutal. And some I follow some like pro-life account people that report on this stuff, and what they said when they were trying to present this thing to the public was, do not look away. Do not look away. But as you've pointed out, the continuance of things like the horror and brutality of abortion and things like Jeffrey Epstein and Hollywood and what goes on with Disney and all this stuff, Disney especially, depends on us literally turning a blind eye to it. And that is powerful symbolism right there.
As their symbol. Yeah. And this is why, like, we didn't start the fire. We didn't light it, but we tried to fight it. No, you didn't try to fight it, though.
Yeah. Because
you're not acknowledging the evils that perpetuate the narratives. You're always turning a blind eye. See? And so this is the matrix I speak of sometimes on the show, the not milk reality. This is how it's created. This is how the false reality presents. It's by willfully choosing to turn a blind eye. This is why they have to show you, because you must choose the blind eye path. Kyle Rittenhouse's trial, they show you, look, boot goes through the floor here, not real. And you go, yeah, but I still want to be mad. Or the guy, all of these countless examples of they show you it's fake and you say, yeah, but I still want to, and that's how you create the fake reality. It's all by consensus, which is the damning thing about it.
And like, look what happened with 9/11. I mean, I always go to 9/11, but
yeah,
we turned a blind eye to what happened at 9/11, and an entire 20 years of war were allowed to result from that, of pointless, wasteful, evil destruction resulted from that because we turned a blind eye and believed the fake reality about 9/11.
Yeah. I mean, people do this all the time. It's how monsters exist. And it's like the sex abuse scandal in the Catholic Church, for example. People knew it was happening. They just ignored it. And people... And people will get so mad at you. This is why, like, Jesus would say, like, if you actually follow me, people are going to hate you, because he did not play that game. He was a shining light, and his presence would point out all of the evils that people wanted to ignore, and that is very, very threatening to people. Like bringing the skeleton, like if you're a person whose existence is like, and when I come around, the skeletons fall out of your closet, people are not going to like it.
Well, yeah, it's like the Pharisees of the day, the corrupt religious leaders of the day hated him because he, with perfect precision and effect, exposed what degenerate, evil people they were.
Yeah, and that's and the only actually threatening thing the quote unquote right wing can do is not turn a blind eye to things and just constantly point it out. Everything else they do doesn't matter, because they're also turning a blind eye to the evil, right? This is why, like, playing the politics game and like whatever, like they also always want you to be like, think about the optics. Think about that. Think about the optics. Think about covering your eye, right? Think about not saying this thing, which is clearly true, but may be perceived badly. Consciousness, perception.
Yeah,
right?
you're right. Like
Think about the optics.
Politics as the entire system, not just one side of it, not just the bad guys. The entire system structurally is dependent on this turning a blind eye, thinking about the optics. And
that's why it's called thinking
Yeah.
about the optics. It's the blind eye. It's all they always have to tell you. You just pay attention to what they say.
And that's why there's no political solution, because the politics is the problem. Like, the problems come from politics in a very real way, at least in the West, and because structurally it's broken and evil, and you can't. It's like it's Frodo's ring. You cannot wield that power for good. You just can't.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And this is also like a reading of the Signs of the Times thing. Like, this is the reason, like, the beginning of the Bible looks so much like the end of the Bible, like the Book of Enoch and the Book of Revelation, is because monsters, like I said, exist at the periphery, at the beginning and the end, at the edges. And so the closer we get to the end of time, the more monsters will begin to reappear, and you will see them. You're already seeing them, right? Like Baphomet, right? That image is a monster made of male and female parts and human and animal parts, right? Because it is a fragmented consciousness. That's what demons are. They are broken pieces of intelligence that aren't in their right places. And we see, even now, the fragmenting of consciousness along those lines every day. The trans movement, the furries, the increasingly loud, if you're paying attention, from some corners of the internet, calls for asking why bestiality is wrong, right? And I say to you again, as I said on the show, you will live to witness the rebirth of monsters. Like, actual things out of the mists of time. Again, the mists, like the hidden places, right? Like, things like satyrs will probably become real again, and minotaurs. And people think that's outlandish, but where do you think all this science of gene manipulation combined with exceptionally loose sexual ethics leads?
Yeah.
Where does that go?
Well, it's already creating monsters.
Men are creating...
It's already. Like, a transgender, butchered up, chopped up person is a monster.
Yeah, like, they become... And like, it doesn't... That's not meant in, like, a mean way. Like, you shouldn't be mean. Like, you have to have compassion.
No, but it's like they've literally turned themselves into a monster. Like, what is a hybrid mashup of two opposites, you know, in a way that's very harmful to a person? Like, that's not a healthy thing to do.
Disorder spills out onto others.
It's like, literally, by the definition of the word, it's monstrous.
Yeah, and so already men are creating genetic chimeras in labs now. They've done it with humans.
Also, monstrous.
On the surface level, right? On the surface level, surgeons have been doing this for a while, like putting pig valves and other organs into people, so they're like half pig, half human. But also, like, they genetically engineer pigs that make human blood, or have been doing a bunch of weird stuff with mice and human genes, and all that stuff that comes from the dawn of time, out of the prehistory myths and stuff, like satyrs and stuff, that will reemerge as you get closer to the end of time, because everybody talked about them, right? It's not just biblical things. It's like, or the Greeks, like Egypt had Anubis, half jackal, half man. Native Americans, the Mayans, had all these human animal hybrid things. That's because those things used to actually exist. They're literally demons, physical manifestations of daemons, like disjointed pieces of consciousness, just like a Bigfoot or a gray alien, but more manifested. And as it was in the beginning, so it will be in the end. That stuff is going to resurface more and more as we approach the end of time, and it will come about through a very prosaic way. Like, it will be like, and now we're going to see about mixing up cow DNA with humans, and then we're going to see about maybe making a hybrid, and then it's like, oh, look, we made a minotaur. And I don't know how long this will take, but they will invariably be things that eat human flesh, because that's what monsters always do. They have to. It's a metaphysical rule. And at the end of time, at the end of time, even like in the books, like, out of the sea rises up the beasts.
Well, dude,
out of the great unconscious, the monsters come back.
Western civilization eats human flesh. Like, what happens to all those aborted children? They get used for medical experiments and producing medicines and stuff. Like we're already doing
mean,
it in these little small ways that are just multiplying. And you know, like what this Baphomet thing you brought up. I mean, like it's a demon with boobs and goat legs.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to cook stuff up like that in the lab, just in little, like, you know, if you take a transgenderism and you take chimerism and you mush them up all together, what do you think you're going to get? Yeah,
exactly. And people will create these things. And the thing is, from Baphomet's point of view, he didn't choose to make himself. He feels like he's an okay fella. He's like, I'm here, but he's a manifestation of a great deal of intellectual, like disorder of mind, of consciousness that has produced. And so the monsters, like, always, this is why there's also a tradition of the baptizing of the monsters, like St. Christopher the dog-headed. Because this is what this is talking about. Like he's like maybe like a werewolf type man or whatever, but he is baptized and then he's made whole again because his disjointed consciousness is put right. And so whatever he was is made. And so, like, there is a solution to the monsters. Like, you don't have to kill the monsters. You don't have to hate the monsters. Like, because you may, in fact, one day in your life, if you live to be an old enough age, encounter someone who's like, I'm actually half pig or half fox. I mean, you can see that now with people that are the trans species people. Right. And that will become more and more, and they will ask for more and more surgeries to, like, make them feel more like their identity. They will ask for more, and they will be given them, and this stuff will begin to manifest, and you'll have, like, fox people, and that will be strange. And you don't need, but that doesn't mean all hope is lost for them, or even that it's their fault, because they're inhabited by literal demons. Like, that's why demons are always depicted as being these disjointed pieces all stuck together, because it's parts of consciousness which are good, but they're all mashed up in the wrong spots, and they're all competing for primacy and they're not in the right place in the hierarchy of consciousness.
And this stuff is like why I don't trust Elon Musk, even though he does.
Yeah, Elon Musk is a total spook. Do not trust him. Everyone, turn away. I promise
anybody that is talking about putting computer chips in people's brains, like, I don't. Okay, if it's gonna. Healing people with disabilities, like, if you can heal them, that's good. That's a good thing. But we have to stop and look that maybe there's more at play here when, you know, people are talking about Neuralink in a transhumanist sort of way and merging man with machine or man with animal and all this stuff. This is a bigger trend that is going really bad places. And you're already seeing people destroy their lives with these sorts of ideas being practically worked out in things like sex change operations that permanently mutilate a person and really mess up their life. I mean, there's not a big difference between Neuralink and letting a kid get a transgender operation. Like, this is coming from the same place, and it's going to have similar effects, like all of it.
I mean, there's actually look, there was a guy in the U.S. He was an ex-banker, a 58-year-old in Los Angeles, who underwent a series of surgeries to look more like a reptilian. He was 58-year-old, and he transformed himself into a genderless mythical creature by spending $75,000 on more than 20 different body modification processes, and he looks like a crazy reptilian man now. And you know what he changed his name to? Is he changed his name to Tiamat.
Yeah, that's like a Mesopotamian.
That's like that is the Babylonian demon of the primordial chaos, of the sea through which actually monsters came out of. So these things will manifest themselves in the real world because they actually exist. But unfortunately for us, or fortunately, we are the physical matter through which these things manifest, for good or for ill. Right? Which is why a person can manifest God and become a saintly, or they can manifest Tiamat and literally change his name to, quote, his 3 names have been changed to Tiamat Legion Medusa.
Yikes. Yeah.
Right? He has 18 horn implants. He was castrated, had his ears removed, had his tongue split so it looks like a snake's. And so he says, and he like I said again, he doesn't feel like he's a bad guy. Right? Because he's so messed up. He says, quote, "I am in the process of going genderless, so I prefer they, their, them pronouns. But my ultimate preference would be to be called it. Like my own kind, the snakes."
Oh, weird.
His real name being Richard Hernandez. So Richard Hernandez transformed himself through surgeries, which were given to him freely by the scientific establishment, into something called Tiamat Legion Medusa, into a snake ripped. And this will get more and more. They'll get better and better at this until like minotaurs are real again.
Yeah.
And that's going to be weird.
And I think that we have to view this as Western civilization wanders further from the light of Jesus Christ, then these things
exactly
fill the spiritual void of our civilization. You know, you don't even have to look at it on a like an end of the world sort of timescale. You can just look at it at a civilizational timescale of where the West started and where it's headed. Like we started with Christ, and and the West is apostatizing, and we started with spiritual light, and we're ending in spiritual darkness. And we started with Christ, and we're ending with monsters.
Well, that's because, so like Christ, the Logos, is the organizing principle of all consciousness. And so when it is not submitted to that, then all of these consciousnesses go rogue and they begin to splinter and fracture off into separate pieces, vying for control of the total. Which is why pandemonium is pan-demon. It's the place for all the little demons. It's like that's what hell is. All of these different consciousnesses, these daemons which exist on the periphery, vying for kingship, which is why this idea of Satan being rebellion against God. It all makes sense, and you begin to see it in the real world. I mean, there's a guy recently in Catalonia in Spain who had fish fins implanted into his skull.
Yeah.
Now that's not a great chimera yet, right? But then we'll get better at this stuff as time goes on, it's gonna get weird, and you're gonna see like the rebirth of monsters, and it's gonna be strange. So I'm just preparing you for that.
Would it be fair that part of the source of this discourse that we've just had is your exploring traditional Christian theology in physics with tools about thinking about physics and physics terms, metaphysics and stuff?
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess largely the project I feel of my life is to show people that all this stuff is not only real, but it's been happening in front of your eyes the entire time. And it's always it's the turning the blind eye to it. But yeah, like, so I think that it all, like I said, Nessie and the Transfiguration share in it something about how consciousness has to be perceived. And when things come either up, down from the depths, or down from heaven to the mountaintop, if it's beyond your ability to cognize, it has to be shrouded, either through darkness of the water or through a cloud, because that's literally how it works. Like, it's physically how that must work, because the wave function has to collapse when you understand it. But when you don't, these things can proliferate on the edges and sort of fractalize out into whatever they're going to be. And so the less we understand ourselves, and the more these demons, the more the darkness in our own mind grows, the more that will manifest in the physical reality, both as, I think you're seeing a return of magical thought in the way, because people are turning more toward the occult and like courting these spirits that actually have external manifestation, but also in their own bodies. And they'll begin to become people like Tiamat, Legion Medusa.
It is interesting to me that, going back to the Schrodinger's cat and that kind of stuff, is that, you know, physicists doing experiments end up in the same woo-woo place as people going out into the woods and killing a crow or something and
Yeah. There is no other place. There's only the one place. People think you can get away from the narrative, the actual narrative, which is the overarching narrative of like of God and the Bible, and they want to get. But there is no other place. You can't get out of it. You can just take on a different role in the story. But if you try to get away from it too hard, you just end up becoming one of the people that turns into a monster.
Yeah.
Or worships the monsters. That's how it always. You can't get away from it. Right.
There is no out of it. There's only going to
is.
the darkness. People go into the
Right.
darkness thinking they're escaping God's order, but no,
Yeah.
they're just going to the darkness.
Yeah. They're just going to which is in a strange way part of the plan.
Yeah.
Because night is also part of the plan of existence. Like there's day and there's also night. So you can't get away from it. And you know, I feel really bad for Richard Hernandez, who has become this monster.
Yeah, it's very sad.
And looks genuinely insane. But in a few years, calling this man looking insane and looking like a dragon person who's mutilated his body will be seen as a hate crime by many people, because he's expressing his true self, and his true self is a demonic entity. But that isn't his true self. That's his fragmented self that is split apart. And so that's why I've said before, the only way you actually can beat any of this stuff is with a transcendent love. It's the only way, because love is the organizing principle which sets right the fractured demonic. You know.
And Christ said, "I'm the light of the world."
So anyway,
you know,
exactly, the light, and without that, you know, all that stuff in the ancient past of like these guys with the head of a jackal or whatever is all real, and it will all come back. I'm not sure how they accomplished it in the past. Maybe they had higher technology than they give them credit for. I think that may be likely. I think like Atlantis and stuff. There's some ideas there floating around, or maybe through a different means. But all that stuff will be there, and all that stuff will be promoted to the legions of power by the Babylon society, which is also fragmenting. So the earthly power will be given to people who look like dragons.
So are you,
after a while,
when in the book of Revelation, all the beasts and monsters with 10 heads and so many horns?
They're all 100%
so
real.
you're taking this literally, and they're probably going to come out of a cloning lab.
Maybe a cloning lab, or I don't know if there's actually a kaiju under the Pacific Ocean right now.
Okay.
Who knows?
Okay.
I mean, just as to finish up, if look at Google Earth, you know, you have that thing, right? And look at the piece of water between Argentina and Antarctica, and tell me it doesn't look like a giant serpent's head.
I've seen this. It does look like a giant serpent's head.
Maybe it's there. I'm not saying
like
it
somebody,
is, but I wouldn't at this point be
like
surprised.
Somebody drew that sucker. I mean, it's not even sort of like a serpent's head. It's a serpent's head.
It's either really a serpent's head, or someone put it there to tell you something. Like, out from the sea will come. And maybe that's a literal kaiju, like Godzilla style. I don't know. Maybe not. But these things will be more real than you are currently imagining. Like, people that want to metaphoricalize things and allegorize things, like, no. There's going to be actual dragon people. And there already are. And there's going to be more of them. And there's going to be people that have the head of a jackal. And it's going to be really strange. And because that's what this is all actually like. That nothing is metaphorical. It's all real. Like, that's what I try to get people to see.
I mean, the plain reading of books like Exodus, where the Pharaoh had magicians that could do real magic. I mean, that's just the plain reading.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you can get away from that. So it's like your worldview has to include that.
Magic is real now. Magic is real now, and people, if you've ever, like, I've spent some time at my local, they call themselves a metaphysical shoppe. They spell it with a SHOPPE. And they say they're a metaphysical shoppe, right? And they have, like, you go in there and they have like various, like, they actually have eye of newt, powdered eye of newt, right? Like, they have all these things to cook witches'
Probably
brews,
like paprika or something.
and to do things. No, I looked at it. Actually smells funky. Like, it could be powdered eyes or something. I'm not sure where they're getting it. But they do have regular stuff like paprika and regular spices too. They have these magical books. They have little idol set up to like Egyptian gods and goddesses. And if you go up in the top floor, they'll do tarot readings for you and stuff. Now, they never did it for me because they all shunned me, which I was a little...
Good.
Like, I went there and no one would even talk
Good.
to
They
me.
should shun you.
I've been there several
Probably
times.
just because you're a man. You know, feminism and witchcraft are
there's men there
synthesized.
too. There's men there too.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's a
Well, good. You should take that as a good sign that they shun you.
Well, I mean, I guess, but I did feel a little like I wanted to talk to them about their magical practices. And like ostensibly they operate a coffee shop. Like that's their front, right? And you go in there and you're like, they have a coffee thing. But then if you walk around the side of the thing, they have all these like spell book tomes and stuff and things you can buy and wands and weird sexual implements that have like incantations written on them. And there's like a guy upstairs with like a tarot setup and an astrologer. And I was like, can I have a hot chocolate? And just no one even looked at me.
Ooh.
They didn't even say anything. I was like, guys, come on. You know? Give me a... I think they knew that they felt that I was there like casing them out.
Take the win.
And so they didn't want to... I don't know. I have to figure out how to ingratiate myself into them somehow.
No, you don't.
I need to figure it out. I want to be their friend, though. Even though they're evil. You know, because I have to... You know, this is... I don't know.
Just go in there and start
feel like
yelling scripture aloud at them and see what happens.
I feel like no joke, I've been discriminated more than most black people today.
By witches?
Because most of them have never gone into a coffee shop and been refused service. But I have. And where's my parade? Where's my parade?
Ending the show.
That will be my new slogan. Where's my parade?
It was a fun show, as usual, Sumo.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. We shall overcome. We shall overcome.
Targets up here, we just had something go right over the top of us that, I hate to say this, looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast and went right over the top of us.